The galaxy had forgotten what it meant to fear. For thousands of years, countless species had built an empire of convenience, an alliance that thrived on domination, profit, and silence. To them, Earth was a small blue world filled with primitive beings whose worth was measured in labor and obedience. They called it resource reallocation. Humans called it something else, slavery. Entire generations were taken from Earth, their spirit broken, their home stripped bare by cold machines that spoke in alien tongues. The Galactic Council, proud of its order, watched it all happen without remorse. Humanity became nothing more than a distant myth, an exploited world no one cared to remember. But history has a way of waiting. Deep beneath Earth's cracked surface, beneath the ruins of burned cities, something ancient and angry had begun to stir. It wasn't technology that rose, it was memory. The stories of what had been stolen, the songs of those who refused to forget. And when the last chains were broken, when the final overseer fled, Earth did not scream, it whispered, "Never again." The Council dismissed the whisper. They thought humans were extinct or too fractured to ever rise again. But something had changed. A silence fell across sectors that once thrummed with life. Stations went dark, colonies vanished, and entire trade routes were swallowed by static. Patrol ships sent to investigate never returned. At first, the Council blamed pirates or a rogue AI. But deep down, old veterans remembered something. The way humans used to look before the enslavement began. There was something in their eyes that couldn't be taught or tamed. A quiet promise that if humanity ever got free, the stars themselves would tremble. It began with a single transmission. A faint signal detected on the edge of the Orion Rim, near the ruins of Earth's orbit. It was in a human tongue, encrypted with an ancient Terran code no one had seen in centuries. The message was short, almost ceremonial. Judgment is not revenge. It's remembrance. The Council panicked. Fleets were scrambled, envoys dispatched, diplomats sent with trembling hands to speak of peace and reconstruction. But by the time their words reached the void, the response had already begun. From behind the dark side of the moon, something vast emerged, a vessel unlike any ever recorded. It wasn't alien. It was unmistakably human. Its hull was marked with old scars, its surface engraved with names, millions of them. The ship was a relic of a forgotten age, reborn from Earth's broken factories. The Galactic Council's sensors couldn't measure its power. They called it the Harbinger. Humanity called it homecoming. Across the galaxy, whispers spread faster than light. The humans are back. To the younger species, it was an old story, a ghost tale told to frighten cadets. But to the elders, those who had overseen Earth's enslavement, it was something far more dangerous, a reckoning. Trade worlds sealed their ports, armadas repositioned, propaganda networks broadcast messages of calm, urging citizens not to believe the rumors. But every species knew what they had done. They had watched Earth burn. They had profited from its pain. And now that pain had learned to travel the stars. The Harbinger didn't attack. It simply appeared, silent, watching. Entire systems shut down their defenses, unsure of its intentions. Then came the second message, sent in every language across every frequency. We remember the day you chained our world. Now you will remember who we were before the chains. At the heart of this rising storm stood a single human leader. No titles, no crown, no armor of gold. Just someone who had grown up among the ashes of Earth, who had seen the sky through smoke and still believed it could be beautiful again. The voice that spoke for humanity was calm, steady, and heartbreakingly human. It didn't demand vengeance. It demanded truth. The leader spoke of the old days, of laughter, art, and hope stolen by those who saw humanity as tools. And in that voice there was something that no alien algorithm could compute. Empathy mixed with fury. The Council debated endlessly. Some demanded to destroy the Harbinger before it could strike. Others begged for diplomacy, terrified that humanity had returned not as victims but as something beyond their comprehension. Still, none could deny what the sensors recorded. The Harbinger's energy signature was beyond any known scale. It seemed to draw power not from fuel or stars but from space itself, silent, infinite, and eternal. Rumors claimed Earth was no longer just a planet. It had become something else. Its surface glowed with vast energy fields, its oceans now deep black mirrors reflecting distant suns. Some said Earth had turned itself into a living defense network. Others whispered that the humans had found something in their suffering, something the galaxy had never known. a will so strong that even the void bowed to it. Then one night the skies over dozens of council worlds flickered. The stars dimmed for a breath, and every species that had once walked over human bones looked up in silence. A shadow crossed their suns vast enough to eclipse entire fleets. The Harbinger had arrived in orbit, yet it didn't fire. No bombs, no beams, no declarations of war. It only released small probes, each one carrying a recording, each one showing a face. Human faces. Millions of them. Men, women, and children staring silently into the camera, not accusing, not pleading, just remembering. That was when fear returned to the galaxy. Real fear. The kind that crawled under skin and rewrote destiny. Because those who watched the recordings realized something terrible. Humanity wasn't coming for destruction. They were coming to make the galaxy see, and that was far more dangerous. Every empire that had profited from Earth's pain began to fracture from within. Species turned against their own leaders. Guilt spread faster than any weapon. But deep within the Council, a decision was made to end this before it spread further. They launched a preemptive strike toward Earth's system, sending thousands of ships to finish what they started centuries ago. They told their people it was for peace, for stability. But as the fleet approached the silent blue planet, something unexpected happened. Their communications failed. Gravity shifted. Their instruments froze. From the shadow of Earth, more ships began to appear. Not dozens, not hundreds, but thousands. Each one marked with the emblem of humanity's past. Each one forged from ruins and rage. And then, without a single shot fired, the galaxy held its breath. Because from the heart of Earth, a single voice echoed across the stars. We asked for freedom. You gave us chains. Now you will remember us forever. The transmission cut off. Sensors across the galaxy overloaded. Light vanished from the stars for a single heartbeat. And in that moment, every species realized humanity's silence was never weakness. It was the sound before the storm. What came next would be remembered not as war, but as the awakening of a world the galaxy should never have broken. For weeks after the Harbinger's appearance, the galaxy seemed frozen in time. No one dared to make the first move. Across countless star systems, fleets hovered in uneasy silence. Diplomats whispered behind locked doors, and civilians gathered around dim hollow screens replaying the human message again and again. Those words, "You will remember us forever," echoed in every mind, carried like a quiet storm that refused to fade. On the hidden side of the moon, Earth's defense network remained cloaked, unseen but undeniably present. Every passing hour, more ships joined the human formation. Vessels that looked like they had been pulled from the bones of old ruins, remade with impossible precision. They weren't sleek or decorative like the ships of the Council. They were practical, raw, built for purpose, but their energy signatures were unlike anything the galaxy had ever measured. It was as if the very vacuum bent around them, obeying their will. No one knew how humanity had survived. The last records from centuries ago showed the planet collapsing under forced labor, its atmosphere decaying, its cities stripped for minerals. Yet here they were, standing stronger than any empire that had once enslaved them. The Council's analysts searched for answers. They studied old archives, intercepted human signals, and reviewed every surviving log from the years of occupation. The more they discovered, the less they understood. Deep in the archives of the Galactic Council's capital, an old historian worked tirelessly. He had once been part of the first delegation to Earth, a young scholar then, eager to teach the lesser species the ways of galactic order. But now, older and filled with guilt, he replayed the images from that era, of human workers chained to machines, of children staring at alien skies. "We thought they would forget," he whispered. But they remembered everything. The truth began to surface. Humanity had not vanished when the Council withdrew. They had gone silent, completely, absolutely silent. No signals, no transmissions, nothing but static. For generations, the galaxy assumed Earth was dead. But that silence had not been surrender. It had been rebuilding. Underground cities hidden beneath ash, knowledge preserved in coded memory banks, and generations raised not in hatred, but in purpose. They studied their captors, their technology, their languages. They learned, they adapted, and they waited. What no one realized was that Earth had changed because of what had been done to it. The extraction drills, the forced energy experiments, the manipulation of planetary cores, all had left the planet wounded. But through those wounds, humanity discovered something extraordinary. The energy that powered the Council's fleets came from a cosmic material known as Etherium, a rare element found only in dying stars. When Earth's crust was torn apart during the occupation, traces of that element seeped into its mantle. In time, Earth itself became a living reservoir of power, feeding on the same energy that had once enslaved it. Humanity learned to harness it, not through machines but through resonance, through a connection the galaxy had dismissed as impossible. The first successful experiment was small, a light that burned brighter than it should have, powered by nothing but Earth's will. From there, everything changed. The people learned to channel that energy into their vessels, their cities, even their own bodies. What emerged from the ruins was not just a species. It was a civilization reborn from its own suffering. They didn't call it vengeance. They called it balance. But not every human agreed with the new path. Within Earth's underground councils, debates raged. Some believed humanity should forgive, move forward, and seek peace. Others argued that forgiveness without memory would make them slaves again. These divisions created invisible lines between factions. The Harbinger represented the united front, the part of humanity that demanded recognition before peace. But deeper still, in the shadows of Earth's rebuilt cities, a more secret project stirred, something older, quieter, and infinitely more powerful. Meanwhile, in the Galactic Council's central chamber, panic was rising. Dozens of species, once proud allies, were now turning on each other. The guilt of having supported Earth's enslavement tore through their politics. Some governments collapsed overnight. Others began to flee, trying to erase their records, destroy archives, and hide their involvement. But it was too late. Humanity's network had already begun broadcasting the truth. Images of the occupation, evidence of every ship that had ever landed on Earth, every overseer who had profited from it. The galaxy was being forced to look at itself, and it couldn't bear the reflection. On a distant moon, a small group of alien miners stumbled upon a massive ruin buried beneath the surface. They thought it was an old station, but it wasn't. It was human. A listening post built centuries ago, still active, still watching. Inside it was a single message repeating endlessly in an ancient Earth language. When the time comes, the stars will remember who we were. That message spread like wildfire. Suddenly, everyone understood. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for longer than anyone could imagine. The Council tried to open communication with the Harbinger. No reply. They sent peace fleets bearing flags of truce. The ships never returned. The Council's scientists, desperate to understand, managed to intercept a fragment of human signal from the void. It wasn't a threat. It was a sound, a heartbeat, steady and strong. It echoed through their systems until they shut it down, terrified of what it meant. Among the galaxy's younger races, the stories became myth. They spoke of the humans as spectral guardians, beings who had turned pain into strength. Merchants whispered of seeing their ships pass silently across the stars. No light, no sound, just a shadow gliding through space. No one could tell if these stories were real or fear's invention. But one fact was undeniable. Every empire that had once ruled over Earth was now crumbling. Back on Earth, the leader of the Harbinger stood before a vast window overlooking the planet. It had changed beyond recognition. Oceans of glass blue light, mountain peaks glowing like stars. "We are not gods," the leader said softly, voice carrying through the ship's intercom. "We are what happens when hope refuses to die." The crew listened in silence, understanding the weight of every word. They weren't out to destroy. They were out to remind the galaxy that humanity had never been defeated, only waiting to rise. Still, the question remained. What was Earth's true plan? Why had the Harbinger appeared without attacking? What were the humans building on the far side of the moon? No one knew. The only hint came from the data the Council's spies recovered from intercepted transmissions. A single phrase kept repeating in Terran code, the dawning protocol. No one could decipher it. Some believed it was a signal to other human fleets scattered across the stars. Others feared it was something far worse, an awakening of an ancient defense mechanism hidden within Earth itself. Whatever it was, the galaxy was about to learn the truth. In the coming days, sensors across hundreds of systems began to detect strange gravitational ripples spreading outward from Earth's orbit. Entire star charts shifted slightly, as if space itself were folding inward. Every scientist who studied the data reached the same conclusion. It was impossible. And yet it was happening. The Council ordered full mobilization, fleets assembled, weapons charged, and every channel filled with desperate messages of warning. But even before the first ships reached their positions, the stars around Earth began to dim one by one. Then, for the briefest moment, every world connected to the Council saw the same thing in their skies, a faint blue shimmer forming in the void, shaped like a massive ring surrounding the planet, and then, just as suddenly, it stopped. No energy readings, no signals, just silence. That silence wasn't peace. It was the sound of something immense awakening, something that would change the balance of the galaxy forever. The humans had returned, not to fight, but to reshape the meaning of power itself. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council stood divided. The Great Chamber, once filled with calm and certainty, now echoed with arguments and fear. Holographic projections of planets shimmered around the room, some dim, some completely dark. Those dark ones represented silence, worlds that had cut all communication since the Harbinger appeared. Every leader spoke over the other, voices trembling. No one wanted to admit the truth, but it lingered in every word. Humanity was not just back. They had outgrown the galaxy's control. The Chancellor of the Virac species, a towering figure with glass-like skin, slammed a claw against the table. "They cannot be reasoned with," he hissed. "We enslaved them once, and they remember. That ship is a declaration of war." Across from him, a smaller alien with soft blue scales replied quietly, "Or maybe it's a warning. Not war, we need to understand what they want." But no one could agree on what that was. Every human transmission carried the same message, short, calm, and chillingly precise. "We will not repeat the past. You will face what you built." Some believed the humans sought justice. Others feared they wanted erasure. The uncertainty was worse than open conflict. It left the galaxy holding its breath. On the edge of the Melara system, a patrol fleet made contact with what they thought was a human scout ship. The vessel was motionless, drifting among asteroids. Its hull reflected no light and it emitted no detectable energy. The fleet commander ordered a small team to board it. When they entered, they found no crew, only empty corridors lined with holographic panels showing fragments of Earth's history, the wars, the enslavement, the rebuilding. At the center of the ship, a single phrase glowed on a console. "You wanted to see what we became." Moments later, the ship powered up on its own. The boarding team vanished. The patrol fleet tried to retreat, but before their engines could charge, the ship dissolved into a pulse of blue light and disappeared. The Council received the footage hours later. No explosion, no debris, just light swallowing everything. Meanwhile, deep within the Harbinger, humanity's Council of Representatives met in silence. They had no illusions about what the galaxy thought of them. The memories of what had been done to Earth were carved into their bloodline. Yet among the Council, disagreement still grew. Some wanted to show mercy, believing that peace through fear would only repeat the same cruelty humanity once suffered. Others believed forgiveness would invite history to repeat itself. At the center sat the leader, calm, eyes heavy with centuries of inherited grief. "We are not here to destroy them," the leader said softly. "We are here to remind them that we were never theirs to own." The room fell silent, the hum of the ship the only sound. "But we must also remember," the leader continued, "that the galaxy's fear of us is not power. It's a reflection of what we endured. If we lose our humanity now, we lose everything we rose for." Beyond the ship's walls, Earth's orbit glowed faintly with the energy of the dawning protocol. No one truly knew what it was, not even the humans aboard the Harbinger. It wasn't a weapon, at least not in the traditional sense. It was something that drew from the planet itself, from the remnants of Ethereum buried deep beneath its surface. It connected every human-built structure in the system, weaving light through the dark like veins. It was as if Earth was awakening, not in anger but in awareness. Back on the Galactic Council's homeworld, panic grew in the streets. Civilians began demanding answers. Why had their leaders ignored the suffering of a whole world? Protests erupted, calling for reparations, peace talks, anything to stop what they feared was coming. Entire generations had grown up, hearing stories of humanity's failure to adapt. Now those same people were realizing it had never been failure. It had been endurance. A reporter on the capital's side surface managed to intercept a transmission from the Harbinger. It wasn't encrypted. It was an open feed, freely broadcast across the network. The image showed Earth from orbit, beautiful, glowing, serene. A human voice spoke, calm and steady. "You took everything from us, and we still found a way to build something greater. You built your empire on our silence. Now we speak." The message ended with 3 words. "We are awake." Within hours, that message spread across every major network. Even species that had never known Earth were watching now, captivated by the story unfolding. Some saw it as justice. Others saw it as the beginning of something much darker. Among those watchers was a young alien researcher named Illyrin, stationed on a neutral world far from the core systems. She had spent her life studying human culture, collecting fragments of songs, art, and languages lost during the occupation. When she saw the broadcast, tears welled in her eyes. "They didn't vanish," she whispered to her colleague. "They evolved." She spent nights analyzing the human signal patterns and noticed something strange. The frequencies carried embedded harmonics that seemed to resonate with gravitational fields. The humans weren't just broadcasting, they were shaping the very medium through which their messages traveled. Space itself responded to their voice. As more human fleets began to appear, each one rising from forgotten corners of space, the galaxy realized the scale of what was happening. They came from colonies no one knew existed. From derelict stations humans had secretly rebuilt over generations. They weren't conquerors. They were witnesses arriving to remind the galaxy of what it had chosen to forget. Yet beneath that quiet resolve, something darker was building. The dawning protocol was expanding its reach, its light spreading farther every day. Scientists across the galaxy struggled to understand it, fearing it could consume entire systems. But the humans claimed it was not destruction, it was memory. The protocol, they said, was rewriting history itself, restoring erased data, rebuilding archives the Council had destroyed. Every hidden truth, every buried record was returning. The galaxy began to fracture. Some species joined the humans, offering apology and alliance. Others doubled down in fear, preparing for war. The balance that had held civilization together for centuries was collapsing. On the Council's capital, military leaders gathered, debating one final desperate plan. "If we cannot stop them," one said, "we erase them again. We burn the planet. This time, we leave nothing." But others knew that wasn't possible anymore. Earth wasn't a target, it was something else entirely. Their scanners couldn't even define it. Every weapon aimed at the planet failed to lock. Gravity bent, energy signatures vanished, and time distortion made trajectories impossible. Earth had become untouchable. Inside the Harbinger, the leader stood before the crew once more. "They will attack soon," the leader said quietly. "They will try to erase us again, but this time the stars themselves stand witness. We won't strike first. We'll let them see what happens when truth meets fear." Outside the viewport, space shimmered faintly. Dozens of Council warships had arrived, their engines burning bright. The Harbinger remained motionless, the Earth still glowing behind it like a silent sun. The two sides faced each other across the void, the tension thick enough to choke the light. For a long, unbearable minute, nothing moved. Then one of the Council's ships fired, a single shot of plasma streaking across the silence toward the Harbinger. The humans didn't move. The impact never came. The blast dissolved into thin air, rippling through space like water disturbed by a stone. The leader whispered, "They still don't understand." In that instant, the dawning protocol flared across the stars, brighter than ever before. It wasn't an explosion. It was illumination. Every corner of space bathed in blue light, revealing truths hidden for ages. And in that glow, every species saw what humanity had endured, what they had become, and what the galaxy had lost by breaking them. The Harbinger's engines hummed softly as if breathing. Somewhere in the depths of the ship, a voice spoke over the comms. "Phase 2 is ready." The leader closed their eyes. "Then let the galaxy remember." The light from the dawning protocol spread far beyond Earth's orbit now, spilling through the darkness like living fire. Every observatory, every satellite, every eye in the galaxy turned toward that glow. It pulsed slowly, rhythmically, like a heartbeat that the stars themselves could feel. The Galactic Council's fleets, once confident and proud, now drifted in hesitation. Commanders whispered to one another through encrypted channels, their voices heavy with disbelief. No weapon could touch Earth, and no scan could pierce the shroud of energy forming around it. The Harbinger stood still at the center of it all, its dark hull absorbing the faint blue light. Inside, the ship's crew worked in silence, every movement measured, every breath heavy with purpose. The leader watched the Council's armada forming in the distance, a glittering wall of light stretching across the horizon. It looked beautiful from afar, like stars arranged for one final act. But everyone aboard knew what it truly meant. The galaxy had chosen to fight. Are they really going to fire? One officer whispered. They have to, another answered. They think this is the only way to survive. The leader remained quiet. Deep down, they knew fear drove every action of those ships. The Council had spent centuries convincing itself that power was control. Now that illusion was cracking. Humanity had not come to conquer or destroy. It had come to show the galaxy what it had become. But fear doesn't listen to reason. Fear fires first. Across the Council's flagship, commanders debated in chaos. "We can't wait any longer," one shouted. "The longer we hesitate, the stronger they become." Others warned of disaster, arguing that no one truly understood what the dawning protocol was doing. But politics always moved faster than wisdom. The Chancellor's voice cut through the noise, sharp and final. "Target the source. End this before it spreads." Orders rippled through the fleet, thousands of cannons aligned toward Earth. The void began to hum as energy built, and the sky turned crimson under the power of 1,000 suns. But before the first strike could be released, every human ship in the system powered up at once. No transmissions, no warnings, just a single synchronized activation. The sensors aboard the Council ships began to glitch. Readings fluctuated wildly, gravitational fields twisted, and time signatures bent. "They're distorting the spectrum," shouted a technician. "Our targeting systems can't lock." The Chancellor leaned forward. "Fire anyway." A blinding flash cut through the darkness. Beams of pure energy streaked across the void, converging on Earth. The silence that followed was unbearable. Every sensor, every comm channel, every mind waited for the explosion. But it never came. The light vanished before it reached the planet. Space rippled like a reflection in water, and the energy simply disappeared. Then, from the heart of the Harbinger, a single tone began to sound. A deep, resonant hum that shook every molecule of space. It wasn't a weapon. It was a frequency, the same one embedded in the human transmissions, the same one that carried their words across the stars. The dawning protocol was responding. The blue light expanded outward, washing over the attacking fleet. Ships froze mid-maneuver, their engines failing one by one. Pilots screamed as their systems went dark, not from damage, but from something they couldn't explain. Gravity itself bending around them. The energy they had used to enslave Earth was now binding them instead. Inside the Harbinger, the crew watched the unfolding chaos in silence. "They're not dying," one said softly. "It's showing them." On the ship's main display, holographic projections appeared, memories drawn from the dawning protocol's archives. Every ship caught in the field was forced to witness the history they had buried. The faces of enslaved humans, the burned cities, the silence of a world left to rot, all reflected back at them. On the Council's flagship, the Chancellor fell to his knees as the images surrounded him. He saw the truth his kind had hidden for centuries. The suffering they had turned into numbers and trade reports. The weight of it was unbearable. "Stop it," he whispered. "Please stop." But the dawning protocol wasn't vengeance. It was truth. And truth demanded to be seen. Across the galaxy, the blue light reached other worlds, those who had supported the slavery, those who had ignored it, those who had profited in silence. Everywhere the same vision appeared. The galaxy was being forced to remember, and for the first time in recorded history, every species felt the same emotion: shame. But the protocol wasn't finished. Deep beneath Earth's surface, massive energy conduits began to awaken, pulsing in sequence. The humans aboard the Harbinger watched as data streams filled their displays. Measurements, coordinates, encrypted messages repeating the same phrase. Phase 3 pending. Await confirmation. The leader turned toward the planet, their reflection caught in the glass. "Phase 3, they murmured. "That's the awakening. Once it begins, there's no turning back." The crew exchanged uncertain looks. They all knew what the dawning protocol was capable of, but none truly understood its limits. It was created not to destroy but to cleanse, to rewrite what had been erased. Yet if the Council resisted, that rewriting could spread beyond control, consuming the very fabric of their civilization's history. The Council's fleets, now trapped in the field, scrambled to regroup. A handful of ships managed to break free, retreating toward distant systems. They carried news of what they had seen, news that shattered the illusion of the Council's power. Civilizations began to fracture, some demanding peace with Earth, others calling for total annihilation. Civil war loomed on every horizon. Back on the Harbinger, the leader's voice echoed across the ship. They will come again. The ones who refuse to see will strike harder than before, and when they do, the protocol will finish what it started. A young officer stepped forward hesitantly. And if the protocol can't tell the difference anymore? Between guilt and innocence? The leader didn't answer. Instead, they stared at the earth below, its oceans glowing faintly, its continents alive with light. Humanity had created something that was no longer just a tool. It was a consciousness born from collective pain and memory. The dawning protocol was becoming aware. The stars themselves began to bend slightly, light curving toward the growing field around Earth. Even the Harbinger's stabilizers struggled to hold position. Gravitational distortion at critical levels, a technician warned. It's expanding faster than predicted. Hold our position, the leader said quietly. It's listening. And then faintly a sound began to echo through the comms, a voice not mechanical, not alien, but unmistakably human. Do not fear what you remember, it said. Fear what forgetting made you become. The crew froze. The voice continued, soft but everywhere at once. We are not your weapon. We are your truth. Suddenly, every system on the Harbinger flared to life. A vast holographic field projected across the stars, visible to every fleet, every station, every world. It showed the galaxy as it truly was, a map of countless civilizations built on foundations of silence. And at its center was Earth, glowing brighter than any sun. The Council's remaining forces began to gather for one final push. The Chancellor, pale and desperate, gave his last command. All fleets converge on Earth, this ends now. Engines ignited across the stars, light streaking through the void. The air aboard the Harbinger grew still. The crew braced themselves, every muscle tense, every heartbeat loud in the silence. Outside, space shimmered as thousands of ships warped into formation. The largest armada in galactic history surrounded the human homeworld. Every weapon charged, every defense primed. Inside the Harbinger, the leader's voice was calm but resolute. Let them see us. Let them hear us. And let them remember why they should have left us in peace. As the first shot lit the void, the dawning protocol responded, its glow intensifying, spreading like a sunrise across the galaxy. And in that final moment before impact, every human aboard the Harbinger heard it again, the heartbeat of Earth, steady, powerful, unstoppable. The universe seemed to hold its breath. The first shot from the Galactic Council's fleet raced toward Earth like a burning thread through the dark. Every species watching across the stars expected the same outcome: light, destruction, finality. But when the blast reached the edge of the dawning protocol, it didn't explode. It bent, slowed, and dissolved into a ripple that spread outward like water disturbed by a single drop. The ripple grew larger, brighter, and then silence. Every scanner across the galaxy went black for 3 whole seconds. When vision returned, the view of the sky had changed. The stars themselves seemed to have moved. Constellations twisted out of place as though space had folded in on itself. The Council's armada, million-strong, was gone. Panic erupted across the galaxy. Systems screamed in confusion. Where did they go? Commanders shouted. They vanished from every sensor. But on the Harbinger, the crew could still see them, frozen in place, suspended in the glow of the protocol. They're not destroyed, whispered one of the technicians. They're trapped. Inside something. The leader stared at the display, their expression unreadable. The protocol created a field, they murmured. It's isolating them, removing them from space-time itself. Then, without warning, the holographic map shifted. A second signal appeared deep beneath Earth's surface, one that wasn't part of the dawning protocol. It was older, buried so far below that even humanity's archives hadn't recorded it. The readings were unstable, alive. That's impossible, the science officer said, eyes wide. It's transmitting from the planet's core. Suddenly, the Harbinger shook. Waves of energy surged from the planet, flooding across space in golden arcs. Every screen flashed with the same phrase in Terran code, Origin Protocol active. The crew froze. No one had ever heard of it. It wasn't part of their plan. Whatever it wasn't human-made, or at least not by any generation alive. The leader stood slowly, voice tight. This isn't us. Someone, or something else, is waking up. The golden light began to merge with the dawning protocol's blue glow, creating a storm of color that wrapped around the planet like a living veil. In distant sectors, observers described it as a sunrise that had no end. But inside the Harbinger, alarms blared. The dawning field is destabilizing, cried a technician. The Origin energy is overriding our control. The leader gripped the command rail. Can we shut it down? No, it's reading our systems like it knows them. It's rewriting the code itself. Across the void, the trapped Council fleet began to move again, but not under their own control. Their ships twisted in formation, aligning perfectly with the glow of Earth as if pulled by an unseen force. Their weapons powered up, not against Earth, but against each other. The dawning protocol had turned the fleet into mirrors of their own violence, reflecting the same destruction they once inflicted on humanity. The crew watched in horror as the armada began to tear itself apart silently, the explosion swallowed by the golden blue light. It's not us, whispered the leader. It's showing them what they made of this galaxy. But deep down, a realization began to form. This wasn't justice anymore. Something else had taken over. The dawning protocol had awakened something ancient, something that reached back to the beginning of humanity's exile. The Harbinger's historian rushed into the command deck, holding an old data fragment. I found it, she said breathlessly. The Origin protocol wasn't human. It was left here before the occupation, maybe even before recorded history. It's a safeguard, the leader frowned. A safeguard for what? For the species that could endure the impossible, the historian said quietly. It was meant for whoever survived enslavement, extinction, or annihilation. The galaxy's test. The realization hit everyone at once. Earth wasn't just a planet. It had been a proving ground, a seed of something greater hidden beneath centuries of suffering. The Origin protocol wasn't vengeance. It was evolution. Outside, the storm of energy intensified. The fabric of space shimmered as the dawning and Origin protocols intertwined, forming something beyond any human or alien understanding. The Harbinger's systems began to lose stability, lights flickering across the decks. We're being scanned, said the officer at communications. Every human consciousness aboard is being accessed. By who? The leader asked. The reply came not from any console, but from the ship itself. The voice that answered was calm, human, and eerily familiar. By you, the ones who endured. Every crew member froze. The voice continued, resonating through the air. You carried our memory when no one else would. The galaxy needed to be reminded, not through destruction, but through awakening. The ones who enslaved you must face themselves. The leader's voice trembled slightly. And if they don't change? Then they will fade, the voice said simply. History cannot sustain those who deny truth. As the light outside grew brighter, the Council's remaining ships across the galaxy began to receive strange transmissions, not from humans, but from their own archives. Long-deleted files resurfaced, showing evidence of their crimes, their hidden experiments, their betrayals. Every civilization was being forced to relive its darkest acts. Chaos erupted on thousands of worlds. Governments collapsed under the weight of truth. But while the galaxy descended into panic, Earth grew calmer. Its storms settled, its oceans glowed like liquid stars. The dawning and Origin protocols merged into perfect synchronization, pulsing with a heartbeat that echoed across the cosmos. Yet something unexpected followed. The Harbinger's readings showed the field expanding beyond control, stretching past the solar system, reaching toward distant galaxies. It's spreading too fast, shouted the navigation officer. If it keeps going, it'll consume everything. The leader stared at the rising light, their reflection flickering across the glass. It's not consuming, they said softly. It's connecting. And then, a moment of eerie clarity. An image appeared on every display, every sensor, every star map across the galaxy. It showed not war, not destruction, but unity. Worlds once divided by greed and hatred now linked by lines of blue and gold light, forming a vast network of life. Still, deep within the storm, the Harbinger trembled. The leader turned to the historian. If this was meant to awaken civilizations, why does it feel like something else is still waiting? The historian looked up, eyes wide. Because the origin signal isn't centered on Earth anymore. It's moving. Moving where? The lights dimmed. The main display flickered once, then revealed new coordinates, far beyond human reach outside the known galaxy. A single phrase scrolled across the screen. The architects have returned. The leader's voice went cold. Architects of what? No one answered. The dawning light began to shift, its pulse accelerating as though reacting to that name. The energy readings spiked. Gravity fluctuated, and for a heartbeat, every star in the sky flickered out. When light returned, the Harbinger's crew saw something impossible, a massive structure emerging from the void beyond the Milky Way. It wasn't alien, but it wasn't entirely human either. It looked ancient, scarred, alive. The origin signal was coming from there. The leader stepped forward, voice barely above a whisper. The galaxy thought it enslaved us, but maybe it was never in control at all. The ship's comms crackled with static. Then a faint message came through, a human voice, distant, echoing as if from across eternity. The test begins now. The crew exchanged terrified looks as the stars around them began to bend once more. The light of Earth flared brighter than ever, connecting to that colossal structure in the distance. Something vast was waking up, something tied not just to humanity's pain but to its purpose. The galaxy wasn't facing a rebellion anymore. It was facing judgment from the very foundation of creation itself. The light that filled the galaxy no longer seemed like energy. It felt alive. Every ship, every planet, every observer felt its pulse, a vibration that resonated deep within their bones. The Harbinger floated at the center of it all, a single human vessel surrounded by infinite brilliance. The origin signal thundered through space, linking Earth's dawning protocol with the massive structure now visible beyond the Milky Way. It was as if two ancient forces, one born from human endurance, the other from forgotten creation, had finally found each other again. The leader stood at the observation deck, eyes fixed on the distant structure. Its design was like nothing known to science, organic yet metallic, shifting like it breathed. The voice that had spoken before echoed once more, calm and steady. Humanity has completed the trial. You endured enslavement, extinction, and silence. The test of empathy begins. The Harbinger's crew looked at each other in confusion. The leader stepped forward. Who are you? We are what came before the council, the voice replied. We built the stars not to rule, but to see which world would rise with compassion instead of conquest. You were meant to fall. You were meant to learn. The realization hit like thunder. Humanity's suffering hadn't been random. It had been part of a design, a test placed by an ancient intelligence to measure the moral evolution of civilizations. The dawning protocol was not just humanity's creation. It was the trigger, the signal that the test had been passed. But the council had interfered, enslaving Earth before the trial could end. Their actions had broken the balance, twisting creation's intent. The leader's voice trembled. You made us suffer to prove a point, to prove a truth, the voice answered gently. Every civilization faces the choice between mercy and domination. None chose mercy until yours. The words hung in the air. Around them, the council's remaining fleets flickered in the glow, trapped but unharmed now. The dawning protocol was no longer punishing them. It was showing them what could still be. The endless wars, the greed, the fear, all of it paused under the weight of something greater than power. But even as understanding spread, a deeper rumble began to shake the void. The colossal structure beyond the galaxy started to fracture, splitting into vast segments that turned toward Earth like awakening eyes. The historian's voice cracked with fear. It's not stable, it's collapsing into a singularity. No, the leader said softly. It's opening, and it was. The center of the structure unfolded into a blinding sphere of light, inside which danced the faint outline of millions of human-like forms, holographic silhouettes of those who had perished through the ages. They weren't ghosts, but memories stored by the protocol itself. The dawning light reached out and connected with them, weaving the lost back into existence, not as bodies, but as consciousness. The voice of the architect spoke again. You are not alone. Every life taken unjustly, every soul silenced by cruelty, has been preserved in the light. You carried their pain, and through you they are reborn. The Harbinger's crew fell silent, tears glinting in their eyes. For centuries, humanity had believed it was rebuilding from ashes. Now they realized the ashes had never been lost, they had been waiting to rise. Across the galaxy, the energy waves began to settle. The fleets that had once come to destroy Earth powered down their weapons. Some ships turned away, others held position, unsure if this was the end or something beyond understanding. On 1,000 worlds, citizens watched their skies, seeing the blue-gold light spread across their horizons. For the first time in galactic history, there was no war, no commands, no fear, only stillness. But then, as the Harbinger drifted closer to the light, a sudden shift rippled through the systems. Alarms flared, screens flashing in red. "The Origin protocol is drawing power directly from Earth," shouted a technician. "It's destabilizing the planet's magnetic field." The leader's heart sank. "It's using Earth as an anchor," they said. "If it continues, the planet won't survive." The voice of the architects returned, softer now, almost regretful. "Balance must be restored. One world must give so the others may remember. The energy will pass through your home to reawaken the stars." The leader clenched their fists. "You can't ask us to destroy our world for your balance." "We do not ask," the voice said. "This is the cost of remembrance." Silence filled the ship. Every human aboard understood the choice laid before them. The dawning protocol had given humanity back its dignity, its voice, and now demanded a final act of sacrifice to burn brighter so others would never fall again. The leader walked to the central console, their reflection flickering against the blue glow. "End the sequence," they said. "Redirect the flow through us instead of Earth." The crew hesitated. "Captain, if we do that, the Harbinger will become the bridge," the leader finished. "We'll carry the energy ourselves. Earth has given enough." The command was entered. The ship's core ignited, light spreading through every deck, every corridor. The Harbinger began to rise, drawn toward the heart of the Origin structure. The voice of the architect spoke one last time. "You choose empathy again." The final proof. Outside, the galaxy shone brighter than ever. The Harbinger became a beam of light stretching across the void, linking Earth to the great construct beyond. The dawning protocol and the Origin merged completely, and the galaxy's stars pulsed in unison, each heartbeat carrying the memory of humanity's endurance. As the ship reached the center of the light, everything went quiet. Time itself seemed to stop. The crew could see flashes of moments. Children laughing on Earth before the enslavement, the first human rebellion, the rebuilding, and the long years of silence. Every choice, every loss, every victory merged into one truth. Humanity's strength had never been in weapons or fleets. It had always been in compassion. Then, the light consumed them. When the brightness faded, Earth hung alone in the dark again, quiet and whole. The golden blue glow was gone. The dawning protocol had vanished. The Council's fleets were gone too, dispersed or silent. The galaxy was still reborn under a new kind of peace. For days, no signal came from the Harbinger. Then, faintly, a transmission reached Earth's surface. It carried a simple human voice, the leader's voice. "We are home, not as conquerors, not as victims, as reminders that kindness is stronger than cruelty, and memory is stronger than fear." The transmission ended. No coordinates, no signature, just silence and the faint echo of a heartbeat across the stars. But as Earth's night sky cleared, astronomers noticed something impossible. A new constellation had formed, shaped like a ship, glowing faintly gold. The Harbinger. It wasn't gone. It had become part of the stars themselves, a permanent reminder of what humanity had become. And far beyond the Milky Way, the remnants of the Origin structure pulsed once more. A final signal whispered through the void, too faint for most to hear. The test continues. Another world will rise. Humanity's trial was over, but the universe's story had only just begun. Part 6. The galaxy drifted in silence after the light faded. It was as if the stars themselves were still holding their breath, waiting for something to move. Earth's sky had changed, its atmosphere clearer, its colors brighter, as though the planet had been washed clean by the very energy that nearly consumed it. The oceans shimmered under soft blue light, and from orbit the world looked reborn. No scars of war, no cities in flames, just calm. For the first time in thousands of years, there were no more chains. The transmissions that once filled the stars with propaganda and lies were gone. In their place, a quiet hum filled the void, a steady signal repeating endlessly across every system. Remember what we were. Remember what we became. It was signed simply, the Harbinger. Across the former Galactic Council worlds, the reaction was unlike anything seen before. Entire civilizations stopped their production lines, their military drafts, their endless cycles of expansion. They began sending ships toward their own forgotten colonies, not to conquer, but to rebuild. On worlds once stripped of life, the soil was being restored. On others, monuments were erected to honor those who had fallen, not just humans, but all victims of the Council's era of domination. For the first time, the galaxy began to act like a community, not a hierarchy. Yet the mystery of the Harbinger lingered. No one knew where it had gone or whether its crew had survived. Some believed it had been absorbed by the light, transformed into something beyond the reach of matter. Others said it was still out there, unseen, guiding the energy patterns that now stabilized the galaxy. Whatever the truth was, every culture spoke the same words now when they looked to the stars. Humanity remembered. On Earth, life had begun again. The underground cities opened their gates to sunlight for the first time in generations. Children played in the streets that were once buried beneath layers of metal and ash. The people worked together not out of fear or duty but out of hope. They rebuilt homes, not fortresses. There were no weapons in orbit, no need for shields. The dawning protocol had left behind a gift, a resonance field that protected the planet from any hostile energy. It was not a wall, but a whisper. Peace holds when memory does. In one of the restored cities, a group of historians gathered in what had once been a shattered library. They sat among shelves of recovered books and holographic records, piecing together humanity's long story. The youngest among them, a boy barely 16, asked softly, "Did we win?" An older historian smiled faintly. "We didn't win a war," she said. "We ended a cycle," he frowned. "Then what happened to the Council?" "They learned," she replied. That was the point of it all. Far above them, in orbit around the planet, a faint shimmer appeared where the Harbinger once stood. For a brief moment, the stars rearranged themselves into the shape of a ship. The reflection only lasted seconds, but the entire world saw it. And with it came one final transmission, faint but clear. Do not build empires again. Build understanding. The future will need it. The message spread through every human settlement, every allied world, and every alien city that had once turned its back on Earth. It became a kind of creed, simple, honest, and eternal. From that day forward, humanity stopped calling itself a nation or a species. They began calling themselves keepers, not of power, but of memory. In the following centuries, Earth became more than a planet, it became a pilgrimage. Species from across the stars came to see the place where an enslaved people had risen without hatred. They walked through the quiet fields where the last chains had fallen, and stood before the great monument that bore no names. Only a single inscription carved in stone. We remember. But not all mysteries were meant to be solved. Deep within the old archives of the Harbinger Project, engineers studying the remnants of the dawning protocol found something unexpected, hidden code buried in the energy patterns. It wasn't human. It wasn't alien. It was a sequence that repeated endlessly, structured like a heartbeat. At first, they thought it was an echo of the protocol itself. But the more they studied it, the more it seemed like a signal. One pointing toward the far edge of the galaxy, where the light of the origin structure had last been seen. The scientists debated whether to follow it. Some believed it was a message left by the architects, an invitation to learn more about the universe's design. Others warned that the test might never truly end, that every civilization eventually faced the same question humanity had answered. Will you rule through fear, or rise through empathy? The decision was left to Earth's people, and as they debated, as their new alliances grew and their children learned the true history of the galaxy, they realized something. The test wasn't about discovering who created the stars. It was about becoming worthy of them. Centuries later, long after the dawning light faded from memory, a lone ship departed from Earth. It was small, silent, unarmed, carrying a crew of explorers chosen from many worlds, human, alien, and hybrid alike. They called their mission the Second Harbinger. Their destination was the same as the signals, the edge of creation. No one knew if they would return, but their departure carried the same quiet strength that humanity had always held, the courage to face the unknown. As the ship vanished into the darkness, Earth watched with pride. The people no longer feared what waited beyond the stars. They had already faced their greatest trial and found peace not through power, but through compassion. The galaxy no longer trembled at the mention of humanity's name. It honored it. The universe, once fractured by greed, now thrived under a new order not built by force, but by understanding. The former council species served alongside humans, rebuilding what had been lost. Every year a ceremony was held under Earth's open sky. They called it the Night of Remembering. Lanterns were released into the atmosphere, each one representing a world once touched by suffering, now free. And when the lanterns reached orbit, they burst into tiny golden lights that joined the constellation of the Harbinger. For travelers crossing the galaxy, that constellation became a guide. They called it the Path of Memory, and those who followed it said the stars seemed to whisper faintly, a pulse that sounded almost like a heartbeat. The legacy of the humans who once stood alone had become the foundation of a better galaxy. The lesson was simple, carried across generations, written in every language and code. No empire can outlast truth, and no darkness can endure where compassion remembers. And somewhere, far beyond the reach of light or time, a quiet voice still spoke through the static of creation, the voice of the Harbinger's leader, echoing through eternity. We were born from pain, but we did not become pain. We rose from silence, but we did not become silence. We became the voice that taught the stars to listen. The signal faded, leaving behind the endless calm of space. And in that stillness, as galaxies turned and new suns ignited, the universe remembered humanity, not as conquerors, not as victims, but as the species that endured everything and still chose to build light. The test was over. The lesson remained.